There are moments in life when the silence around us grows so heavy that it feels like exile. Friends drift away, familiar comforts vanish, and the world seems to close its doors. In such moments, despair whispers that we have been abandoned, that solitude is proof of insignificance. But do not be deceived by that voice, for isolation is not always the absence of God's care. More often, it is the very stage upon which His greatest work begins. Consider how a seed must disappear into the soil. From above, it looks like burial, but beneath the surface, unseen life is stirring. The earth presses against it, the darkness envelops it, and yet, within that hidden chamber, roots are forming. It is in silence, in obscurity, that growth begins. So too with your soul. God often draws you away from the crowd, not to punish you, but to prepare you. When God isolates you, He is not pushing you aside, He is setting you apart. There is a difference between rejection and refinement. The world may look at your loneliness and call it failure, but heaven looks at your season and calls it formation. Many of the greatest voices we honor were first silenced in wilderness. Before the prophet speaks, he learns to listen. Before the shepherd becomes a king, he watches sheep in forgotten fields. Before the Redeemer steps into public ministry, he spends 40 days alone in the desert. Do not mistake the waiting for wasting. In the hush of solitude, God sharpens what cannot be shaped in the noise of crowds. He prunes distractions, untangles illusions, and strengthens the roots of faith. The hand that removes you from certain places is the same hand that intends to plant you in better ground. The pause is purposeful. The silence is sacred. Therefore, when you find yourself in a season where doors close and voices fade, resist despair. For the very emptiness you feel may be the space God is clearing for something greater. The world might not see you now, but heaven sees you completely. Trust the unseen work. The season of isolation is not your ending, it is your preparation. Isolation is not abandonment, but preparation for a greater purpose. When we think of isolation, it often carries with it the sting of rejection. We imagine that being left alone is evidence of failure or weakness, and despair quickly grows in the soil of loneliness. Yet this perception is not the full truth. Isolation is not abandonment, but preparation for a greater purpose. What appears to be the absence of activity is often the stage where God begins His most delicate work. When the noise of the world is hushed, when familiar voices are no longer near, when opportunities seem to vanish, it is then that the soul becomes sensitive to the quiet shaping of divine hands. A sculptor does not work in a marketplace. He withdraws his creation into a studio, away from the crowd, so he can give attention to every detail. In the same way, God often withdraws us from the busy arenas of life because His hand is carefully molding what cannot be seen by others. Think of the seed once more. To an unknowing observer, a seed buried underground is dead, forgotten, covered in dirt. But within that darkness, pressure and silence awaken its hidden life. Roots push downward, stems reach upward, and eventually the surface breaks with green growth. So too, when you are isolated, it may feel like being buried, but in truth you are being planted. What feels like an ending is often the quiet beginning of transformation. The soil of solitude becomes the womb of new strength. History gives countless witnesses of this truth. Before great leaders were revealed to the world, they were often hidden away. Joseph, forgotten in prison, was being prepared to govern Egypt. Moses, tending sheep in Midian, was being shaped to lead a nation. David, alone in pastures with his harp and sling, was being refined for the throne. Even Christ Himself entered into wilderness solitude before His public mission. These seasons were not mistakes, not punishments, but divine appointments for deeper growth. Isolation strips away illusions of strength and self-sufficiency, leaving us face to face with our true need for God. It removes the applause and comparison that so often cloud our vision, forcing us to see clearly what matters. In stillness, faith is deepened. In silence, character is forged. What may look like loss is truly preparation, for only in the desert can thirst teach the value of water, and only in the night can the brilliance of light be understood. Thus, when you feel separated from the world, remember that the hidden work of God is underway, and though unseen, it is never in vain. God sets you apart to refine, strengthen, and shape your faith. God sets you apart to refine, strengthen, and shape your faith in ways that cannot be accomplished when you are surrounded by constant noise and distraction. Separation has a holy purpose. It is in those moments when the crowd disappears, when the world's attention fades, and when familiar comforts are withdrawn, that your soul becomes soft clay in the hands of the potter. Refinement is rarely pleasant, for it means that impurities are burned away, weaknesses are confronted, and false supports are stripped down. Yet the process, though uncomfortable, is necessary, because gold does not shine until it passes through fire, and steel is not strong until it endures the hammer. So too, your faith is not solid until it is tested and shaped in the hidden furnace of solitude. The act of being set apart is not meant to humiliate but to prepare. When God isolates you, He is not simply removing people or opportunities from your life. He is removing the things that keep you from seeing Him clearly. Often it is in the stillness of aloneness that the voice of God becomes distinct. When the approval of others is gone, you begin to seek approval from the only one who truly matters. When the crutches you leaned on are taken away, you discover the strength of His everlasting arms. Isolation sharpens dependence, and dependence deepens trust. This is how faith is strengthened. A tree that grows in sheltered soil may stand tall, but its roots are shallow. Only the tree that endures storms sends roots deep into the earth. Likewise, a believer who never faces solitude may look strong on the surface, but when trials come, they are easily shaken. God sets you apart so your roots may grow deep, hidden from sight, but unshakable when the winds of life rage. Strength is built in silence long before it is revealed in action. Shaping faith also means transforming perspective. In solitude, you learn that success is not defined by applause, that value is not measured by visibility, and that progress is not always marked by movement. You learn to walk by faith and not by sight, trusting that unseen hands are guiding your steps. Every pause becomes a lesson, every delay a form of training, and every closed door a redirection towards something greater. To be set apart is not to be forgotten, but to be entrusted with a process that only the patient heart can endure. It is in this sacred separation that God writes truths into your soul which no storm can erase, and no enemy can steal. The silence of waiting is sacred ground for unseen growth. The silence of waiting is sacred ground for unseen growth. In the pauses of life, when everything feels still and the world seems to move on without you, there is a deeper work taking place beneath the surface. Silence can feel empty, but in reality, it is full of meaning. Waiting trains the heart in ways that activity never can. It slows down the restless spirit, teaches patience, and strengthens trust. In a world that glorifies speed, achievement, and constant motion, waiting feels like weakness. Yet it is often the very classroom where God teaches the most enduring lessons. Growth that endures is rarely loud. Just as a tree develops its roots silently underground long before its branches stretch toward the sky. The soul grows in hidden spaces before it is revealed in the open. The seasons of waiting are not barren. They are the womb of new life. The stillness gives room for reflection, for learning to listen rather than speak, for hearing the whisper of God that is drowned out by noise. Silence is not the absence of progress, but the shaping of a deeper foundation. Many of the strongest lives in history were not forged in crowds, but in quiet seasons of waiting. Noah built an ark in years of patience before the rain came. Abraham waited decades for the promise of his son. Hannah wept in silence before her prayer was answered. Each endured a season where nothing seemed to move, yet in that silence their faith took root and their trust deepened. It was not wasted time. It was preparing them for the weight of what was to come. The sacredness of waiting also lies in its ability to strip away illusions. When you are forced to wait, you realize that your life is not sustained by your plans or speed, but by God's timing. The silence becomes a mirror showing where your hope truly rests. It is in the long, quiet nights that reliance on God becomes more than words, turning into lived experience. Growth unseen is growth most necessary, for it is the kind that cannot be taken away. Thus, the silence of waiting should not be despised. It is a holy place where strength is built, faith is purified, and vision is clarified. It is in those hushed stretches of time that the roots of endurance and the character of trust are formed, preparing you for seasons you cannot yet imagine.